say the average Super Bowl has 145 plays, and then you times that by 5 seconds, and then divide by 60 is like 12. Yeah, so that totally makes sense.
Hello, welcome to Hat Trick. I am Jordan Coltman, joined by Elliott Tanti, and we are rejoined by Braydon, who took a week off last week, but he's back and ready to go. Boys, we were worried, Elliott, that the Super Bowl would be a bit of a stinker after such an amazing run of playoff games, and yet it came down to 3 points in the end. It did not disappoint. Before we get to the Super Bowl, we will talk Super Bowl. We're going to talk Oilers. We're going to talk coaching. We're going to talk Olympics a little bit. Before we get to all of that, I just wanted to lead off. Elliott, you gave us a couple fun prop bets. This is not a prop bet, but I wanted to lead with this because it's a bit of a trivia question for both of you. There's like a 3.5 hour broadcast for the Super Bowl, right? Something like that. And plus the pregame and then the postgame, whatever. It's like 5 hours of television. There's like $4 billion spent in advertising, however many billion people watching it, right? I don't know how many Frito-Lay's chips are bought. I'm sure it's a terrible day for poultry, as more hot wings are probably consumed than any other day of the year. All of those things combined, though, can either of you tell me what the average minute count for actual ball in play football is played during a Super Bowl? So not guys lining up, waiting for a play to be called, not just the clock running, but actual ball from center to quarterback to receiver or wide receiver whistle. Ball in play football. How many minutes on average does a Super Bowl have? Take a guess.
Would that include like kickoffs and punts and all that stuff? I guess it would, right? So
That's ball in play. That's ball in play, yes.
Football.
Yeah. Not the snap count, not any of that stuff. I mean, actual ball in play.
Well,
I think every play is probably on average 5 seconds, and they probably run 40 plays a half. So 5 times 40, 200 minutes, 400 minutes, or 400 seconds. Divide that by 60.
You didn't even use the calculator. Oh, now you are.
Braydon, do you want to just guess? Well, Elliott does calculus.
I feel like this is a trick question. I want to say like all of the time that's allotted to the game, but obviously there's a good portion that is just waiting until the ball gets snapped. So
and the clock's running,
like
right?
Maybe, yeah, that's right.
7 minutes.
I don't know, maybe like, yeah, I'd say like just around 10.
Braydon, you're very close. It's 11 minutes on average. Is the actual football being played in a Super Bowl. All right, we'll leave that there.
Yeah.
Let's go to topic. Okay, topic one today, obviously, as mentioned and as teased, we are going to do the Super Bowl big game, the big game, as they call it. The Los Angeles Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals went head-to-head at SoFi Stadium in California. The commissioner called it the most beautiful stadium in the world. The Los Angeles Rams winning the Super Bowl 23-20. As I also said off the top, we were worried, Elliott, a little bit last week that maybe it wouldn't live up to the hype of how great the playoffs had been thus far. We had all these tight nail biter games, and this one didn't disappoint. It got right down to the end. The Rams went on a 15 play drive that just ate up most of the fourth quarter. Just seemed like the Rams marching down the field, little nickel and dime plays to get themselves into a position to score. I think that up to that point, there had only been like 3 or 4 flags the entire game. And then there were 4 or 5 flags on just the end of that drive alone to set the Rams up on the 1 yard line. They tried a quarterback sneak that didn't get them anywhere. And then Cooper Kupp making a great catch that gave the Rams the lead. And then an awesome defensive stop by the Rams sealed the deal. And Cincinnati and Joe Burrow just ran out of the opportunity to get back in it. Big game. Cincinnati and the Rams were very evenly matched most of the way through it. But yeah, the Rams winning it. Elliott, I know, you've been kind of designated as our resident NFL fan, as you've been sort of more engaged with it all season long. How did the Super Bowl live up to your expectations? Did it, I guess is the question.
Oh, I think you, if you're the NFL, you're very pleased tonight. I think the game was outstanding. It was exciting. It caps off what's been an outstanding playoff for the sport, which we talked about last week. Outstanding halftime show. I mean, I think this, like, I really feel like the pregame was good. The postgame was good. Really, it's really difficult to find issue with anything either in game or out of game with the Super Bowl this year. They did a great job and everything went on basically without a hitch. And it was a great game. What more could you ask for? Very enjoyable and exactly what the league wants. So good for them.
Braydon, thoughts on the big game?
Yeah, I mean, I think the same. It was you want to see a really close game, and that's what it was. There was, I think, both defenses were the big talking point. I'm surprised that Aaron Donald wasn't the MVP. I mean, Cooper Kupp had an amazing game and frankly an amazing season, but Aaron Donald won them that game. I really think that that's the case. I think Joe Burrow had his sights set on at least tying that game up. Did the rest of the Bengals, obviously, and they've proven that they could. Just the fact that Aaron Donald made a huge stop on the 4th and 1 play, shocked, as I'm sure all Cincinnati fans are and the rest of football, to see them in a shotgun formation on a 4th and 1. But there's a lot of intangibles that just led to, intangibles. That defense, and namely Aaron Donald was a game changer and won them the Super Bowl. It's an amazing story. A lot of different really great storylines. If you're a Rams fan, you're excited that you won at home and you won with all of these. They've got a stacked team. They've got a lot of really great stories. Stafford coming from Detroit and winning in his 15th season and in his first time with the team. And then a story like Donald or Andrew Whitford, what's his name? Whitworth or something like that. He's like 40 years old and just this, he looks like Santa Claus and he's still out there pounding the gridiron. So just a great, and if you're a Bengals fan, it's a heartbreaking loss. Not a lot of people thought that you guys would be there, but I think there's a really bright future for Cincinnati.
Yeah. I mean, Joe Burrow's obviously among that crop of young quarterbacks who have really taken over the league in the last couple of years. And now with the retirement of Tom Brady, it's their league and for all intents and purposes. I'm thinking of obviously Mahomes and it just overall, you've got these young guys, Joe Burrow and Kyler Murray in Arizona. And you've got just, an opportunity for some of these young players to really establish themselves. And after a really bad, you can't really say it was a bad year, but unfortunate year for Joe Burrow last year where he was injured and really sort of spoiled an opportunity to see what he could do. He comes out in his sophomore season and takes his team all the way to the Super Bowl and did a lot of the things he needed to do as a quarterback to put his team in a position to win. Unfortunately, they just, again, we talked about this, they came up against a juggernaut defense and a really good defensive stand to finish it out. Aaron Donald said it at the end of the game. They had been struggling all game to sort of get momentum as a defense going, and that they just happened to be able to shut them down on the most important drive. And sometimes that's what Super Bowls and games come down to. You don't need to be perfect the whole way through. If you're good in the moments when it counts, it can work out. And Los Angeles also, had to overcome some adversity. Losing Odell Beckham Jr. early in that game was a challenge, and you could see it. Stafford really had one passing option, and even at the end of that 15 play drive I mentioned off the top, when they got down into the red zone, you could tell he only was looking for Cooper Kupp because that's really the only guy he could rely on. Yep. And Cooper made two big plays, obviously one drawing the penalty that probably was a touchdown if he hadn't been hit in the face, but he makes an amazing play to seal it for him. Like, that's a great catch in coverage on a tricky little kind of broken play for Stafford. But not a gem of a game for the LA Rams. They've definitely had better nights, but the truth is they don't ask how you did it. They just ask if you did, and they are Super Bowl champions because of it.
Yeah. I got to jump in on the Cooper Kupp stuff. I think I sort of at the beginning of the fourth quarter, I said to my mom, who I was watching it with, and Kupp's having kind of a quiet game.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I think he was involved in 4 back-to-back plays. And Jordan, I fully appreciate the TD pass is great. Drawing the penalty is great. the play that won this game for the LA was the 4th and 1 wide receiver sweep that they put the ball in his hands. The game's done if they're out for him. They don't get a first down in that play. And I think what it speaks to for me, though, is something that you talked about last week, Jordan, and you were right about. This could very well come down to a coaching battle. And Sean McVay lost every weapon in his arsenal except for Cooper Kupp. And when the going was tough and they needed a touchdown, he called 4 back-to-back plays to Cooper Kupp in various different running, catch and run schemes, or obviously the reversal that we talked about. That's a coaching call. That's a decision that you make in that moment. Yeah. Put the ball in my best player's hands. And it takes a lot of guts to do that because he's going to be in double. Everyone knows the ball's going to him, and they did it anyway. And just a gutsy sort of effort, I think, from a coaching standpoint. Can you imagine? They also lost players on the back end. Stafford was hurt at one moment. I mean, in terms of what he had to deal with as a coach, the decision to put the ball in Cooper Kupp's hands maybe now seems obvious, but certainly at that time wasn't for a sure thing and hadn't been his option up until then, right?
Yeah. Totally. The other thing that was just stood out to me was how many people lost bets after OBJ went down. There was so much money on the line for, I think, just specifically him and his stats. I just cringed after that. But no, I'm with you. Just an exciting game. Really, really exciting. The whole presentation was really great. Halftime was awesome, nostalgic, fun. It wasn't too crazy, but there was a great energy around Hollywood and just putting that whole thing together.
Well, and I think, as we talked about this last week, Elliott, like the Super Bowl halftime show is very much a part of the entire experience. It's a cultural event, it's like a pop culture event, but it is iconic. And there's so many iconic parts of it, obviously good and bad. Historically, obviously the Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake incident with Nipplegate or whatever you want to call it is kind of infamous. It's interesting. I was listening to a great podcast this week about sort of the history of advertising in the Super Bowl, and the Super Bowl halftime show is part of that. Obviously, I mean, everything in the Super Bowl is sponsored, right? You've got the coin toss has a sponsor, and the bloody anthem has a sponsor, and every piece of it has a sponsor.
It was nothing but Bitcoin transferring ads to medication.
Let's get. I want to get to that in a second. Just let me finish my point, and then I do want to take a moment to talk about advertising. But
or electric cars
with the halftime show, what's interesting is the history of those kind of things and how the NFL had become very conservative after the whole Janet Jackson thing. They really blamed it on her, and I mean Justin Timberlake I think got away a little bit scot-free on how that whole situation unfolded historically, but the NFL got very conservative, very white. They went to old time classic rock performances for I think the next half decade. Maybe Prince is mixed in there, to be fair, but it took a while for them to get comfortable again, kind of coming to newer, younger artists. And then we've seen that a few years in a row where we had sort of female pop stars. You had Lady Gaga and Katy Perry and Beyonce, and they kind of move in these things. But this is really a huge, I think, an important moment culturally for the NFL, which is obviously as athletically a dominated, Black athlete dominated sport. And yet culturally surrounding it is very white in how its presentation is. And so it was really cool. And I think I do think that there's some credit that needs to be given to Pepsi and to the organizers and the producers to push for this and to get it done. I mean, obviously Jay-Z is a part, Rockefeller Records is a part of the producing team of the Super Bowl halftime show. They have been for a couple of years, but it's interesting because these are like older artists in the Black, I mean, other than Kendrick Lamar. So there's a real sort of, like Braydon said, there's a nostalgia element to it. There's this part of it, but it was interesting because, I think a lot of people were introduced to things that they weren't comfortable or aware of before with what this was. There's history there. There's all these different details of it, which is awesome. And really, really cool. And and also yes, these artists didn't get up there and do a lot of controversial things, but I mean, Eminem did finish his song and took a knee, which is 100% a tribute to Colin Kaepernick. This is on the NFL's biggest day, and they didn't cut away from it. They made sure that was seen there. There is a little bit of that progress, I think that's good. But I don't know. It was interesting. It was definitely a big show.
Where's that
It was
with the
challenging
players?
because it was a daytime show, right? So they couldn't do all of the like lighting effects and fancy pyro they sometimes do when they're on the East Coast. But I mean, I enjoyed it. I've watched it twice. You know, I had a good time watching it. So I didn't think it was mixed well, but that's a technical detail.
What do you mean? Dre was on the mixer the whole time.
No. I mean, I don't think that the audio
TV.
feed
Yeah,
going
that's
to
an
the
indictment on
TVs was
Dr.
very
Dre.
good.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Anyway, any of you had thoughts on the halftime show?
I thought it was great. I mean, I thought it was excellent.
All right, well, let's throw to our resident party pooper, Elliott.
Yeah, I don't agree with you at all. I think this is like a half-assed throw to sort of like inclusion. I don't think the NFL is well on its way to any sort of.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying as a broadcast, it was as a broadcast.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I look. There's lots of nods. There's going to be people that are watching the game. They're going to see a nod to something that they know a lot better than other people, right? And fair enough. I think Eminem was asked not to take the knee. And
that's it. Yeah.
Right? So
that apparently has been rebuked. There was a report that he had been asked to, and apparently the NFL has now come out and said, no, we were aware of it. It was done in every rehearsal.
All right. Okay. So they were fine with it. So I'll retract that. But I mean, they also cut a line from Kendrick Lamar around a song around police, or at least it was bleeped out. Noticeably in Dr. Dre's song, it was included. The shot at the police in his song was included. But there's still a little bit of
course. It's still the NFL.
So
no one's saying that the NFL is woke.
I know, and I'm not suggesting that you are too, but I think there will be people tomorrow that will pearl clutch and say, look, this is the NFL taking the next step into the 21st century, and it's not. But it's like credit where credit's due, and I get that's what you're doing, and I know you're not going overboard and saying that or suggesting that, but that's what's going to come forward, and every NFL exec and every owner is going to take a big, pat themselves on the back and say, we've done something here and overvalue this. Like let's
and that's all fair, but like also let's just take this in the context of like entertainment quality. You telling me this isn't a better halftime show than The Weeknd last year? Just even in terms of like production and scale and performer caliber and all of that. Nothing against The Weeknd, but that was like, that felt clumsy and messy and kind of like, this felt way more just conceived as a better idea and a more innovative idea to have these artists, these guys together. Yes, you're right. Some of it's tokenism. There's no doubt about that, but so much of this is about tokenism. Yeah. That's the whole thing. It's funny. I enjoyed The Rock's little pregame pump-up speech, but it's a great nod to what the NFL desperately wishes it was, which is the scale and sort of like the
XFL.
Well, they kind of wish they had the ability to be the WWE sometimes in terms of the way they hype themselves into being something anyway.
That's why they got the owner of the XFL.
We're in the weeds. Let me get to one other thing. On our last podcast, Elliott went pretty hard at the Olympics, and more specifically on one topic I wanted to push back at, because he said the Olympics were unwatchable due to commercials. You cannot tell me after watching the Super Bowl that is equally almost unwatchable when it comes to the absolute onslaught of corporate greed that is being slapped in your face the entire game, whether you're in a commercial break or not.
Yeah. You guys don't want to buy electric cars with your cryptocurrency?
Well, I do now.
I do now too. I want all the private medicine.
It was so interesting. Someone made a really good point on Twitter. I don't know. I should have got their name, but there was all these callbacks in the commercials to early 2000s, like pop culture and advertisements for crypto funds. And it's like, it truly articulates to me a changing of the guard in terms of, millennials are like the dominant sort of spender now. And so we need things that relate to them. And I think this is the first time I've seen from like a cultural standpoint, something that I felt was really targeted towards me. I was like, I guess I'm part of a generation that has money now. And so that to me was interesting. But what frustrates me in the Canadian broadcast is we don't get the American commercials. So we just get like the shitty Canadian ones that they'll intersperse some here or there. But
it was weird.
I was watching an NBC feed.
Yeah, see, and I was like the NBC feed, but CTV kept cutting in. And I'm telling you, when they sell the rights in Canada, they should be selling the entire broadcast,
entire package,
commercials and all together, because it's so infuriating for me that we have to watch these, and they're bad Canadian commercials over and over and over again.
There was one with a bunch of goats. Do you guys remember this one?
Yes, that one was.
Okay, but like, what a missed opportunity. You're Disney. I think it was Disney. Like, I know you have the money to bring in Tom Brady.
He's on a boat somewhere in like Majorca.
So was the ad with a bunch of goats.
All right. Okay, let's leave the advertising aside for a second. I want to touch on one more thing here before we leave this alone. Elliott again brought up prop bets, and I wanted to run down some of the fun results for some of these. We joked about the national anthem is always one that's timed. It was a big production for the national anthem. And this is the Star Spangled Banner, not America the Beautiful, the unofficial national anthem. It was 1 minute and 50 seconds this time, which leads to an over. The estimate was 138, which I guess has become similar to the average. So if you bet the over, you're a winner today. The coin flip, which is a great one because it's literally a coin flip, was plus 100 for heads, which is strange to me, but
it was heads.
But here's the more interesting thing about this. This is 2 consecutive heads in a row, and both teams that lost the coin flip won the game.
I need to say something about this.
In fact, the losers of the coin flip have won the previous 7 Super Bowls. You do not want to win the coin toss.
Okay, but here's the thing I don't understand. You guys have to help me with this. How is LA the visitors of this game? No, especially with all of their fans in their arena.
It has nothing to do with that though. No,
but it did at the very end of the game. It did when that defense came out and they started getting all of the hype. That part's true.
That's true too. But the NFC and the AFC, that's predetermined ahead of time.
Well before.
It has nothing to do with whether or not you're the home team. And remember, this is only the second time in history that the home team has actually hosted the game. Last year, the Buccaneers did as well, and I believe they were the away team for that game as well.
Well, they should change it.
It's a neutral field. It just happens to be that they got the home field. It's neutral because it's predetermined before any teams make the playoffs. Right. It's a weird one for sure. But again, it's only a new thing. I mean, now you can almost say it's an annual thing because it's happened back-to-back years. And in back-to-back years, they've won. Elliott, you and I we both took bets on the Gatorade. And not only did I win my pick for the Super Bowl winning team, but I also called the Gatorade color. It was blue.
Blue. You said blue. My dad won that one in the house too. That was a good bet. Well done.
What was yours,
Braydon,
Elliott?
Elliott went with water.
Water or clear. Yeah.
Oh, like
he thought they were all like full for nutrition.
Anyway. No, they need the sugar.
Well,
so you took the Rams, Jordan. You took the Bengals, Elliott. I was early on. I was rooting for the Bengals, and then I was watching with a buddy whose uncle was a huge Rams fan, and his uncle passed away 2 weeks ago, and so we quickly started rooting for the Rams. And man, what a great!
I think it's a better story.
Well, it's so much better story. And here's the thing: if the Bengals ended up winning, there would have been so much contention around that missed pass interference face mask call.
Well, okay. I wanted to speak to that though, because I think sometimes karma happens in sports, right? So you have that missed call. It's clearly a missed call. Yeah. But then when the Rams are pushing there in the red zone near the end of the game, there is a call against the Bengals for holding that was not holding. It was definitely a hand on back, but it wasn't holding. A couple plays later, there was a holding call that they called pass interference because the ball was near. But earlier, Wilson got called for holding, and you could even hear both Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth kind of went, okay, I guess they called that holding. It wasn't, but sometimes things work out in the end because you got a missed call earlier, you get the big one later. Here's a couple last statistical facts for you. This is interesting. Joe Burrow just set a Super Bowl record for being sacked the most times. in a Super Bowl. So that's a fun one for the young gun.
They need some better offense to help that guy next year.
And then Sean McVay is now the youngest head coach to win a Super Bowl, beating out Mike Tomlin, who had previously won with the Steelers. Mike Tomlin won at 36 years old and 323 days. And Sean McVay is also 36 years old, but he's only 20 days. Wow. So he is the youngest Super Bowl winning coach in Super Bowl history. Last thoughts, Elliott, before we move on?
I hope that this is a sign of things to come, that we've finally got parity in the NFL, at least amongst the top teams. Wouldn't that be great if we had playoffs like this every year? Because this is not always the case. And I've been watching NFL long enough to know. So maybe we have some parity.
Yeah. Well, it certainly lived up to the hype. It lived up to our expectations, and it was a lot of fun. And I guess now we wait and we see what happens next year, because we don't have any more football now for a little while. I mean, the NFL knows how to program an off season, and we'll have lots to talk about through all of that, I'm sure. I'll also give you just a little tease here that we are working diligently here at the podcast network towards next NFL season, perhaps having an NFL show. So we'll see how that develops. This is not a Super Bowl ad, but it may or may not be a little ad for the network. That's the Super Bowl. That is topic one. We'll leave it there. Hey, if you're a fan of Hat Trick Sports, then I promise you're going to love the Backyard Basketball Podcast. Hat Trick's very own Braydon Coltman sits down every Wednesday with his best bud, Christian Steck. And together, they break down all the news, rumors, transactions from around the basketball world. Whether it's the NBA or college hoops, these two guys love talking basketball, and you are going to love listening every Wednesday on the Backyard Basketball Podcast. Let's leave football alone now for a little bit. We've spent a lot of time on it for the last couple of weeks, and obviously now it's the end of the season. Let's jump back into hockey, which we've neglected for a few weeks, much to Braydon's chagrin. The Edmonton Oilers and the Montreal Canadiens have new head coaches. We can kind of pick them off one by one. Let's start with the Montreal Canadiens really quickly, because I know we want to spend more time talking about the Oilers. So Montreal obviously is just an absolute dog's breakfast of a hockey team right now. They are really struggling, coming off of a Stanley Cup Finals appearance last year. But they have really just completely gone in the opposite direction, and not helped by the fact that obviously Carey Price is going through what he's going through, and Shea Weber, injuries led him to retirement, and they just kind of, it felt a bit like the magic that they had last year was a lot of overachieving and really good luck. And it's all gone. It's all gone. They're a terrible hockey team again. And they find themselves in a situation where they ended up cleaning house. They fired their coaching staff. They ended up firing their entire front office. They're under new management now. We talked a little bit about that previously. I believe they've got a new general manager that I don't think we've had a chance to talk about this, on the show specifically. Kent Hughes came in. So someone from the outside to deal with. And then just over a week ago, they announced a very interesting choice for their head coach, first time coach, but former NHL superstar Martin St. Louis is the new head coach of the Montreal Canadiens, who are obviously in a rebuild. They're probably in tank mode and preparing for what's next mode. But they find themselves with a very inexperienced head coach who obviously will learn on the job. So that was interesting. Let's start there. Braydon, when you heard Martin St. Louis was going to be the head coach of the Montreal Canadiens, your first thoughts were?
Don't care. Honestly, I don't really care. I mean, I think it's cool because Martin St. Louis is an amazing hockey player. I have no idea what his abilities are as a head coach. I'm sure that
I don't think he does either.
Yeah, and so I think it's a test. Let's see how he can. Well, what they said is maybe he can weed out what's actually wrong, having been a player in a functioning room before. I mean. It's too bad because of the height that they fell from. I just think that this is a clear evidence of how impactful the likes of a Carey Price and a Shea Weber are on a team. And I mean, for him to continue on after the season, I think the odds are not in his favor, but I mean, who knows? This is a great opportunity.
You mean Martin St. Louis? No. They've signed him for the.
Oh, this is interim.
No, he's been signed as the head coach moving forward.
Well, good luck. That's
Elliott.
That's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, I don't know. There's not a lot of precedence for players coming in without having gone through like the normal coaching route through junior AHL, and
You're
then,
right. There's not a lot of precedent. In fact, there's one.
yeah, his name's Wayne Gretzky, and it didn't go too well. Phoenix.
No, it did not.
So
and I'm sorry, Martin St. Louis was no Wayne Gretzky. He was a great hockey player, but he was no Wayne Gretzky.
Well, and you know, so you know, I think what it doesn't matter. What I'm saying is that it just also doesn't feel like the long-term kind of thing. I mean, I think it's sort of, you need a French-speaking coach. The team's not doing too well. Ken Hughes needed someone to just take over, and you knew something was going to change when Ken Hughes was put into that role. Every GM wants their own guy. You get at least one guy, if not two, if you're a GM. That's generally the rule. And well, we are where we are right now in terms of that with Montreal. I mean, I think that Braydon's point is really astute. Like, it goes to show you how impactful Carey Price and Shea Weber are on that franchise, and how much they've done for a long time. The Canadiens are a mess. Bergevin's departure was messy. I think they overperformed last year and went into this season with just unreal, it wasn't sustainable under their current situation. And it is what it is. I mean, these are the kinds of decisions you make when you're going to give someone a shot, and it doesn't really matter because you're playing with house money anyway. Everyone knows it's a rebuild.
Yeah, I mean, they are 8-33-7. That's their record.
They
have allowed
8 games.
Well, they in regulation, yes. They have allowed 90 goals more than they have scored. Yeah, that's almost 100 goals more against. Like, they are in. I mean, I was not exaggerating. They are horrible, and so yeah, I mean, they are looking for a great lottery pick and hopefully a chance
Shane Wright's going
to figure out what's good. Let's leave them alone.
If I told you at the beginning of the season a team was going to be 8-33 and whatever their other number is,
7, yeah,
you would have been hard pressed to say it was Montreal. Hey, I mean, we all thought there was going to be a regression.
Oh, yeah, I probably would have picked.
I would not have picked Montreal.
Buffalo or something, right?
Phoenix.
Yeah, not Montreal. No, just not. You know, the only connection I can find between Kent Hughes and Martin St. Louis is that their children play minor hockey together, or junior hockey or something like that.
Well, maybe that's where he coached them there.
Oh boy.
I mean, the Arizona Coyotes have 12 wins, if that's anything.
Yeah, they're looking really good right now.
All right, let's jump to the Edmonton Oilers. Another coaching change that we all kind of saw coming. It was inevitable after what we had struggled with. I think the question is, why didn't they just do this sooner? It's one of those things. Sometimes you kind of hope things will change. And I mean, it really does feel like, from Ken Holland's perspective, he was just crossing his fingers and hoping for the best, because there was nothing else, and there hasn't been anything else really he can do. Obviously, they signed Evander Kane, and I mean, great. He scored in 1 goal. He's scored 1 goal so far. Like
two goals.
Yeah, 2 goals. They're not going to. One player isn't going to fix what ails this team. So the hope now, I think, is that they can do some things system-wise. They can do some things, no new voice in the room kind of thing, and maybe that's true. So obviously, Dave Tippett and Jim Playfair were relieved of their duties, I believe, on Thursday, and they called up from the minors Dave Manson to take over the defense, and Jay Woodcroft, who returns to the Oilers bench. He was previously an assistant coach under the previous regime. He finds himself in his first head coaching job in the NHL, but obviously a huge contrast to a guy like Martin St. Louis. This is a guy who has really earned this opportunity. If you look at it from, having worked all the way up from being a video coach with Detroit through being an assistant coach with both the San Jose Sharks and with the Edmonton Oilers under Todd McClelland, and then was given a great opportunity to go to Bakersfield, develop some young talent, run a bench and all of that. I guess starting there, we got to see what he had, to offer as a coach. They win their first game. They certainly looked like they were out there playing for him. There was a bit of the same kind of pride on the line that often happens when a team has a coach fired and they have to kind of go, okay, I guess we have to, dig a little deeper, and they look good. It's one game. Braydon, how do you feel about the new bench boss in Edmonton?
I was definitely in the camp of not wanting to see Dave Tippett go for the longest time. I was worried that just another spinning wheel would come in and we would, be in the same cycle of, well, this isn't working, let's try something else with a new coach. But I think, with Ken Holland's philosophy around the change is going to come within the organization, I think that this was the perfect person to advance into this position. Jay Woodcroft, probably of anybody available, even the likes of a Paul Maurice, who would be an amazing coach for a team like this, to come in having success with Bakersfield. This has been an AHL team that's been highly successful, and it's the kind of success everyone wants to see with the Oilers. And I mean everyone. But the fact that Jay Woodcroft knows this organization from the ground up is, I think, a really important thing. And the fact that he's been with, Connor and Leon before, he's even been with Evander in San Jose. He knows all of these guys in different kinds of ways. And I'm pretty sure he was with Evander.
No, Evander Kane would have come in after Todd McClellan was gone.
You think so?
Yeah, 100%. He was with Winnipeg when Todd McClellan and Jay Woodcroft were in Edmonton, I think.
Yeah, I think my point still stands, just in that, we saw Broberg, Nima Leinen, Tyler Benson getting an opportunity with Cassian out, and I haven't seen that kind of spark from Tyler Benson before in the earlier games of the season. That it's those kinds of things, I think. They're playing to survive right now, and I think Jay Woodcroft's going to do a great job. But again, like you said, it's one game, and you got to start to see those changes become pattern and habit moving forward. The goaltending thing still, it's great to see Mike Smith bounce back after 2 really terrible games. But that needs to be a consistent as well, or else they have to pull the trigger very quickly on making sure the beach ball doesn't get past our goaltending.
Yeah, Elliott, how do you feel about Jay Woodcroft being on the back of the bench?
Yeah, happy for him. Excited to see what he's going to do. It seems like he's kind of in a weird situation where it's like just till the end of the year, and then we'll see. Of course, everyone remembers, is it Todd Nelson, the guy that keeps the year and did a great job, and then ended up not getting the head coaching job, which was seemed kind of bewildering to me. You hope if Woodcroft does a good job, he'll be given a little bit of a longer leash. I think my sense is, I don't think David Tippett got a fair shake here. I think if you look at the entire body of his work from the time that he started in Edmonton to today, generally it's been pretty good. The problem I have is that throughout this entire year, the Edmonton Oilers have not played a Dave Tippett-like system. And that said, finally, I think it finally came across to everyone that he had lost the room, or the team wasn't responding to what he was putting down. Dave Tippett coached teams. We used to see it all the time. He'd come in here with his shitty Coyotes team, and they'd play you hard and they grind you down. And the next thing you know, you were down 3-1, and there was 10 minutes left in the third period, and you had no idea how, except for like Mike Smith, this crazy old guy goalie, had kind of kept you in it, and then the game is done. And the Oilers, when they were at their best under Tippett, actually could do that. They just sort of won games. They played strong defensively. They had the firepower to get up 1 or 2, and then they could hold people off. That with good goaltending. This year, they've not played a Dave Tippett-like system. They've been inconsistent. Their defensive play has been absolutely atrocious. Like, that's the only consistent thing, is that their defense has been bad. It's just been a matter of whether their goalies can save them, or they can outscore their mistakes throughout the year. And I think that was a final sign to that this was not working, and a change was needed. But is Woodcroft going to have enough time to institute the defensive systems that Edmonton desperately needs? If this was the decision you're going to go, shouldn't you have made this decision 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, when the team had fewer games? There was more opportunities to do actual coaching and hold practices. Like, this is the thing for me is I think on the whole, it's probably a fine decision based on where the team was and based on Woodcroft's record, but you're certainly not setting the guy up for success. And I just worry about that,
No, totally. I think that's what the point I made earlier. I think that there was an opportunity with a longer runway to make this decision if you were inevitably going to make this decision anyway. And obviously hindsight is what it is. But, we are where we are. I think there's 38 games left for the Oilers or something like that, maybe 37 now after Friday. So they have an opportunity to still do something significant with that time. They're going to play a lot of hockey here to make up for the COVID missed games and a lot of back-to-backs. And they're going to need Mike Smith to be good. They're going to need whomever the other goalie that is healthy and ready to go. It needs to be good. We know there's going to be some injuries. That's just how this works. So the depth is important. Having some of the experience Jay Woodcroft does with some of those younger guys will be beneficial, not because I think like a lot of the media wants to hype, he's got all these great relationships and he's going to give Benson a better chance. I don't think that's what it's about. What it's about is he knows what their strengths and weaknesses are and limitations are better than maybe Tippett would. And there's an opportunity for him to know where to push and where not to. I did think it was really interesting and really innovative lineup wise, what he chose to do in his first game with an additional defenseman and one less forward. We haven't seen that in the NHL very much, if at all. He talked in the post game about the reasons they were doing it in Bakersfield was more about necessity than actual creativity. But he sort of talked about the fact that sometimes, when you're forced into a situation, you learn that you may have been missing something, and he's found a lot of success with it. That would be an interesting thing to see the Oilers maybe try to do. I think they need to roll four lines more. I think they need to balance out their minutes a little bit better. Obviously, Connor and Leon are going to drive this team as they should, but you need to give some of these other guys who you're going to rely on for secondary scoring actual opportunities to do that. I do think that was a bit of a challenge for Dave Tippett. He seemed to not have the confidence in some of his depth guys to give them the opportunity to work through the hiccups that they occasionally had. A guy like Warren Fogle should be playing more minutes considering what you paid for him, what you clearly value him as. And that goes for even some of the smaller players on this team, the Brandon Perlinis, the Devon Shores, the McLeods, the guys who we have seen flashes of really good opportunity offensively from. And sometimes you need to give those guys the opportunity to fail, but in doing so, also give them the opportunity to succeed. And I know that the runway is, as Elliott said, not as long as it might have been a month ago, but it's still 37, 36, whatever games. And there's still a lot of hockey that's going to be determining where we end up in the standings here as a hockey team. And I think that that's kind of where the focus needs to be. So, any last thoughts, boys, before we wrap this up?
I think there was something really important to see. Like the two games they came out of after the All-Star break they were atrocious. Like they came out flat-footed. There was no tape-to-tape passing. Like it was just they looked out of whack. And then against Chicago, I think everything, it was really like a make or break. That you could either band together or you could be completely deflated, which is what we ended up seeing once Duncan Keith went down with that. Just completely, he was out cold like that. And that's scary. That's a scary thing to see, especially a veteran like that to have happen. And then Cassian's injured the same day, and then your coach is fired. That all in one, fell swoop. And I think that has to be the very bottom. It's got to be the bottom for this team. I think you can only go up from here. They've got a new coach that's going to make them work hard. They've got some new changes that are going to come down. I really liked seeing Ryan McLeod on the penalty kill. There was something that his speed was really helpful, and they seemed a little bit more. There was more fight once Woodcroft was in that last game, and just it's got to be going up from here.
All right, I think we'll leave it there. That's topic 2.
The Ordinary Podcasting Network is excited to announce that we have launched a merch store on our website. The store is full of ordinary swag, including t-shirts, hoodies, and hats. You can pick out something awesome and support your favorite podcast today by heading over to ordinarypodcasts.com.
All right, let's jump into topic 3. We're doing this one just specially for Elliott. we talked last week about the Olympics. Elliott's very excited about the Olympics. He's been completely and utterly enthralled at the entire thing. Huge China fan, big fan of their politics. Braydon didn't really get a say or any input into his experience watching the Olympics this year round. So I'll lead with that. Braydon, have you been watching the Olympics? We're a week into it. Have you found it interesting or captivating? Can you manage to watch it with all the commercials, or do you also find it unwatchable due to that? And what, if anything, have you found interesting about
interesting? Well, yeah, I mean, I've been watching a little bit of the board cross, some skiing events. What else did I see? I saw some what's the high jump, fly jump, what's the long jump, what's the ski jumping,
ski jumping.
That's amazing.
Bit of controversy with that, though,
incredible luck, really.
Bit of controversy with the ski jump this year
that I'm not aware of because of how many commercials there are. I was telling Elliott, I'm excited to see there's a Maltese snowboarder. There's Jamaican bobsledding, so great to see some representation from countries we wouldn't see necessarily. Hard to watch the hockey. The women's hockey is really fun. The men's hockey, it makes me wish that the best players were out there. Yeah, that's pretty much it for my Olympic take. It's not as captivating as I feel like it once was. The one thing that really stood out to me too is how upsetting it is to see somebody like Kaylee Humphries, who was one of our biggest Olympic winners as a Canadian, now representing America, bobsledding for the American team. I didn't realize that would bother me as much as it does. I just traitor. It just doesn't feel right.
I don't know if I'd go there. I think in the conversation we had last week with Alicia Rissling, she pointed out a lot of the struggles that these athletes have gone through financially. And I think that there's definitely a backstory with Miss Humphries and how the organizing committee for the bobsled did or did not treat her very well, considering the attention that she, as a very charismatic athlete, gained for herself. And I think that there was a lot of politics at play, as there always is. And as Elliott has pointed out,
does she have dual citizenship?
Yeah, she has dual citizenship, and he had an opportunity to compete with either team. And one team gave her a bigger opportunity to do things her way, and gave her a bit more autonomy as an individual, made her an opportunity to make a lot more money sponsorship wise individually, make a living doing this sport instead of scrounging for every penny that she could in the Canadian side of it. So there's a lot of factors.
Then the team should just be sponsors instead of countries.
Maybe. Yeah, the whole system's kind of broken. I do want to know, Elliott, if at any point through the last week you have found yourself interested or engaged in any part of it, or are you still where you were last week, sort of detached and uninterested in it?
No. I guess I watched some curling today with my mom, which was more about hanging out with my mom before the Super Bowl. But not felt particularly inclined nor made space for it at all. Again, I know there are some interesting stories. Stuff is happening, and I've tried to sort of moderate my tone based on our conversation last week and the subsequent interview that you did. But my heart's not in it. And it's kind of disappointing. It feels like I feel like about the Olympics the way that you feel about CFL.
That's fair. Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, and baseball. I think here's what I would say. I think that it's interesting because I think that here's my trigger warning for all of our listeners. I'm going to get political for a second. I think when you look at the other things going on right now in this country and frankly around the world, but let's start in this country. And, we're seeing a lot of polarization. We're seeing a lot of frustration and anger and emotion. coming out in some pretty bold and you can choose whatever adjective you want ways, aggressive, violent even, but definitely loud ways. I think it makes me frustrated and also a little bit sad to think that what used to be a unifying thing in the Olympics, something where regardless of where you were politically in your own country, you were able to at least agree that supporting people who chose to wear, your maple leaf on their shirt with pride, and did so out of, a calling to achieve success at the highest levels of something they were passionate about, athletics and representing their country, representing the people that had got them to where they were, the people that had supported them, and also the people who had come before them. I think that that does feel like it has been lost a little bit, and that symbols like the flag that have become so polarizing, where literally we have completely inverted what patriotism, if it ever meant anything, means. And I said this on the last show, and I do believe it. I mean, I think that I am someone who has gone on a very interesting journey with my own patriotism. I'm someone who used to very proudly stand for the national anthem because it was something that had been sort of passed on to me through my grandfather, and this idea of, that's what you did. It was a way to show solidarity with the people who, had fought and died for our country, and all of the things we're taught as kids about what our identity is as a nation. I think I've grown and changed and learned a lot more about, our country's history and some of the struggles our country has had, and some of the things we have not done some of the stories we have not done a very good job telling. But what I think is frustrating or disappointing for me in this whole thing is that I think the Olympics has become very much the same thing, where we've lost what it could have and maybe intended at one point to be, which was an opportunity for people to come together, to show some form of, global compatriotism, as opposed to just nationalist patriotism, an opportunity for people to be united for a brief time. Wars have been stopped for the Olympics to take place. People have literally, laid down centuries long disagreements country to country over it. Now, has it always been clean and perfect? Of course not. We've had murder, we've had terrorism, we've had all kinds of horrible things. That's human. That's part of what this is. But I think it's sad to think that, in such a short time from what the Vancouver Olympics even felt like to where we are today, we really do feel, for me at least, like we've really lost a lot of people along the way. And we've also lost a lot of ourselves along the way. And I'm not sure I have a point other than, the conversation we had last week, Elliott, left me feeling kind of sad, kind of disappointed, because I was like, what is it that, what was it that I find in it that other people don't, and maybe I'm wrong to feel that way, and maybe I'm not. I know that when I turn on the TV and I see the Olympics on TV, and if there's a Canadian athlete there, I am always interested in who they are and why they're there and how they got there. That's still true for me. I'm fascinated by that. My conversation last week with Alicia was very much the same thing. I was fascinated by her story, shocked a little bit about what it cost her to do something like that. Her talking about the fact that I think if, she said at one point, if I'd known I was going to have to spend, 90 grand on a bobsled, I probably would have just quit right there. And that's interesting. But again, I'm not sure I'm making a point so much as just sort of spilling my feelings out. But yeah, I guess I'm just sad. I'm disappointed. I'm sad. And, I feel badly that the narrative of who we are has gotten so murky.
I mean, I think part of this is a consequence of us having difficult conversations. There's consequences to difficult conversations, right? And I think, that some of that is experiencing this, right? I don't know that there's a solution. I think what you've said, I would agree with everything that you've said. But when you have the types of conversations that I think Canada needs to be having about its history, when you have the types of conversations that we've had about what the games absolutely actually represent in terms of propaganda for evil people, when you have conversations about the money and the corruption of these major international organizations that run these types of events, those are hard. They have consequences. And so I think we're all negotiating those consequences now in our own way. And I mean, there's still another week. You you might find me back here in a week, much more engaged, we'll see. But I think that's how I feel, is sometimes there's consequences to this.
For sure. And I don't want to suggest that I'm sitting here trying to convince you to change the way you
not.
feel about it, because I also think that, like, everything you shared last week and everything you shared this week, I think all of that's true. I feel very similar about it. I think that the Olympic movement has lost its way. I think the Olympic movement if it ever had it, but the corruption has become much more overt than I think it used to be. And obviously, yeah, we saw it in Sochi. We've seen it here in China, that, the cost benefit or whatever certainly, is out of balance and it's out of whack. I go back to what I said before, which is, I do believe we shouldn't be punishing the amateur athletes for this. I don't think it's their fault. I think that the organizing bodies maybe have more responsibility. And I don't just mean the Olympics. I mean specifically, like, where is the Canadian IOC on this, or the Canadian Olympic Committee on this? Where is the national committees in terms of what their role is in this? Where's the pushback? Where's the sort of the challenging of it? As I also said, I'm optimistic that things like this Aboriginal bid out of Vancouver are a step forward. I don't believe it's just tokenism. I think that it's sincere, and I think that that's really important, and hopefully we can see more of that. I am hopeful that, the platforms that these athletes have can continue to grow, because I believe if we go back to the athlete part of this, if we go back to the individuals in it, I think there's an opportunity there for change. I would say that part, but I do think also, like, as much as I was saying a second ago that I think it's sad that we've kind of lost our passion for it because it was a unifying thing, I think the lack of unification is equally causing that dispassion. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's part of it. It's harder to feel proud to be Canadian today than it was in 2010, let's say, because, as you say, that narrative is a lot more complicated. And I think that is a good thing in many ways. And I think it's also a bad thing in some ways. It's a mix of things, right?
I think it's just it's honestly just a reflection of where we're at. And I think that we have to be, specifically Canada's history and culture, because I think that that's the biggest thing that the Olympics are beyond just, it's sport, it's culture, it's who we are and how we identify. I think that we have to recognize that is where we are right now. And that is that the conversations and those kinds of things that are happening are leading us to a greater culture, a better identity than we were at.
We'll leave it there for tonight. Thank you both for joining me, having a great conversation as always. And get ready, because we're going to have to start looking for new things to talk about, because the NFL season is over. It has dominated the entire month of January and into February here. So that's done. And I know, Braydon, you're waiting for the 3-topic power episode in the upcoming weeks about the strike in Major League Baseball. We're still working on it. Some negotiations hard into the night have been taking place to bang out a deal on when and where we can have that conversation.
Maybe we can get a federal mediator involved.
Yeah, we might need a mediator to help us find an agreement on when we're going to talk about Major League Baseball, because currently we're at loggerheads over it.
When do pitchers report? Next week, eh?
Well, they can't.
Yeah, but
I think they're supposed to report. Yeah, either next week, the week after. March 23rd is first spring training. So we'll see.
All right,
they need some players first. All these teams need players. They haven't had an off season yet.
That's our show for this week. Oh, Elliott, you've uncracked it now. Now he wants to go into it. All right, that's our show for this week. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great night. That's Hat Trick. Hat Trick is a member of the Ordinary Podcasting Network. It's produced every week by Jordan Dowler-Coltman and Braydon Dowler-Coltman. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.
The Ordinary Podcasting Network wishes to acknowledge that the lands on which our conversations take place include Treaty 6 territory, the traditional meeting ground and home for many Indigenous peoples, including the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, and the Nakota Sioux peoples, as well as the unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations.
We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. And we extend our appreciation for the opportunity to live, create, and share stories on these territories.
The Ordinary Podcasting Network intends to engage in conversations and dialogue which acknowledge that reconciliation is not a destination, but a journey, and that we remain committed to practicing our craft in a decolonized space.